discussion, usually we need to have two opposing views. Well, we are not going to have it here, because I must admit that I don't fully agree, but I agree with most of the things that Walid just said, and I think that what I'll do, I'll try to expand the horizon and to try and to talk about the Arab Revolution, first of all in general, and then maybe to talk specifically about certain Arab countries. Now, I think that what we are witnessing is a kind of a paradox, because what we see is a common phenomena in various Arab countries, but which is expressed and will be expressed uniquely in each of the Arab countries, because evidently each of the Arab countries has its own composition of society and culture, and there are differences, and we are going to witness that in the transition period. And obviously not every country will go through the same process, and I agree also with the final conclusion that it's going to be a long process, probably shortened than in Europe, but it is going to be a long process. Now, what I'm going to say is not very organized. It's according to a certain point, a certain remark that I would like to emphasize. The first one relating to the very definition of the term that we are using, revolution, rebellion, Arab Spring, and so on. First of all, revolution. What we are witnessing is really a revolution. Now, that depends on the definition that you use. Now, you talk about theory and so on, so if you open the books on the subject, then you see that there are different definitions of revolutions. And therefore, it depends on what kind of a definition you take, and that gives you a clue about how to define what we see. Now, let me mention one definition, which I find very useful. It's by Michael Kimmel, and he says that revolutions are attempts by subordinate groups to transform the social foundations of political power. Okay? This is his definition. Now, many of the definitions, they refer to whether they succeeded or not. In order to be defined as a revolution, it has to be successful, to succeed. And so far, we can't really say that about most of what is happening in the Arab world. So therefore, this definition does not relate to whether it is, was, will be successful or not. And therefore, according to this definition, what we are witnessing is already a revolution, whether it has succeeded or not. And therefore, I think that this is a very useful definition. As I said, it differentiates between revolutions and other forms of social change, such as coups and rebellions. It includes successful and unsuccessful revolution. It embraces a large number of sequences over various amounts of time, and it includes both violent and peaceful modes of change. Okay? That's why it's very useful. But again, if you adopt another definition that will emphasize the question of success, then you might say that still it hasn't been a revolution. Now, to the term Arab Spring. This is, of course, a very positive term. And therefore, it is a little bit misleading, because we can't really say that in certain places we are witnessing an Arab Spring. This is the reason why in my writings I talked about the four seasons, like, Vivaldi concert, the four seasons. So what we are witnessing, in fact, is a spring and a winter, and autumn and summer. And countries can move from one season to another. Perhaps Gaddafi in Libya was witnessing a winter during the civil war, and now is going to enter maybe a kind of a spring. Maybe, perhaps, okay? And Syria, no doubt Syria, this is not a spring, not yet. So it's a kind of a winter. So therefore, I think that this is a more useful term when you talk about the four seasons. Then you can apply it in a more appropriate way to what is going on in the Arab world. But it's a catchword, Arab Spring, you know, and that's why we use it. But to what extent it's accurate, it describes the situation, well, it's not that accurate. Okay, that was the first point regarding the terms. The second point is regarding the Arab perception of what is going on. If you read Arab intellectuals, if you read Arab newspapers, journals, and so on, from their point of view, no doubt it is a revolution. I mean, without even going further into the classification and the definition. It is a revolution, and generally speaking, they are very proud of it. They are very proud of it because it is their own making. It is not enforced or came from abroad. It was not imposed by the Western world, by the superpowers, but it came from within, from beneath, by society, by individuals, and therefore it is no doubt a very important turning point. Let me give you one example taken from an Egyptian weekly, El Aharam Weekly, which is in English, but it is, I consider it as a very important newspaper, and some of the leading Egyptian and other Arab intellectuals published there. If you remember, on the 6th of October, it was the celebrations of the victory of 1973 in Egypt. In fact, this is the most important national celebration in Egypt, the 6th of October celebration. Now, because my academic work, my recent academic work, was on how the Arab states celebrate their national and religious holidays, I was very much interested to see what was happening on the 6th of October. And it was very interesting to see that, first of all, the army, of course, played a very significant role because the holiday is associated very much with the army and its victory in their perception over the Israeli army. And Mubarak completely disappeared from the historical narrative, because usually Mubarak, as the commander of the Air Force, was a very important role. He completely disappeared, and Sadat re-emerged as an important figure in the celebrations. Now, and this is the important point, how the changes were related to the October celebration. And here I bring you a quote. It took Egypt 38 years, and I quote, yes, to match its historic victory on 6th of October 1973 with a glorious revolution for democracy and freedom on the 25th of January 2011. Just as a generation ago, our young men crossed the canal to destroy the Bar-Lev line and restore dignity and freedom to our soil, this year our young women and men did the same, crossing the boundaries of fear and repression to bring down the walls of dictatorship and injustice. You see, they make here a parallel, a comparison between the two revolutions, between the two great victories, as already within less than a year, this is something magnificent and big as the victory in 1973. And they are not the only one, I mean the Egyptians, seeing it in that way, because I can bring many quotations. So in the Arab perception, it is a turning point, it is a very major, important episode. So this is the second point, which is the Arab perception of the revolution. The third point relates to the reasons. Now here I'll be very short and concise, because I think that by now we are already quite familiar with the reasons for the revolutions, and I think that here they are quite common. I mean, they are relevant in the various Arab countries, and we talk mainly about the social and the economic factors that were relevant, like the demographic issues, like the unemployment, like the question of low salaries, and of course, political issues, the question of dictatorship, the fact of repression, and the lack of democracy, transparency, and so on. So these are quite common reasons if we take into account whether it's Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, and other countries as well. These are common reasons that brought the youth and others to the street in order to change the system. Now, about the next point, about the changes. You made a certain categorization of type of regimes. Now, I want to make another categorization of what kind of changes are taking place in the Arab world, and in general, I can divide it into 4 categories. The first category is those countries that we can say, in general, underwent or already completed the revolution. Completed, well, this is not the right word, completed, but I mean completed in terms of changing the regime. Okay? Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia. These are the 3 countries that underwent a revolution, and they succeeded to topple the regime. A new one has not so far succeeded it. I mean, in Tunisia it's going to happen pretty much in the near future. Hopefully in Egypt as well, and Libya also. But it hasn't happened so far. This is the first category. The second category is countries which are under or undergoing a kind of a civil war. And this is Syria, and until recently Libya. Libya moved from the second category to the first category. Okay? It's a dynamic categorization. So in the second, for the time being, we find Syria. Well, in the past it was maybe Bahrain to a certain extent, but it seems that Bahrain moved to the third category. And the third category includes countries which are undergoing certain changes, peaceful monarchies in general, and the important word here is not revolution, but reform. Okay? And this is the reason why, when we go back to the first point of definition, the term revolution does not apply here. Rather, the term, which was coined by a British historian when he referred to the 1989 changes in Eastern Europe, he used the term revolution, okay, which is a mixture between revolution and reform. Okay, revolution with an F, which is a nice coin word, again, in order to describe what is going on in Morocco, in Jordan, but also in Saudi Arabia. True, it's a different regime, but if you are talking about reforms, then reforms took place in Jordan. They were trying to respond to the demands held by the opposition. That was in Morocco, that was in Jordan, but that was the situation also in Saudi Arabia. It's not a coincidence that the elite poured more than $100 billion into civil society, if you can use the word, right? I mean, different organizations and individuals, and in order to calm the situation and to calm down the opposition. So in this respect, from my point of view, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Morocco are more or less the same, because they are responding in the same way to the calls of the opposition. So this is the third category, okay, of countries which are undergoing certain changes, particularly reforms. And the fourth category is the countries which you can say, in a way, nothing happened there. I mean, they were hardly affected by the situation, like Kuwait, like Qatar, like Iraq, like Sudan, like Palestine. Yeah, this is very interesting, by the way. But there are explanations, okay? Because you might ask why some of those countries are quite quiet and are not responding in the same way. Well, there are different answers. But I can say, for example, in Iraq, well, maybe it is connected with the recent civil war in Iraq. They don't want to go or repeat that as well. Algeria as well. Sudan as well. Palestine, well, Palestine is engaged in a different struggle, which is mainly against the occupation. This is the main concern. It's not the main concern, although the issue of Hamas and authority, I mean, these are important issues, no doubt. But the issue of occupation is the most important one, and that's why Abu Mazen turned to the UN and so on. So So there are good reasons sometimes why you don't find those changes in certain places. But in any case, this is a good categorization, so I believe, in order to see or to analyze the phenomenon, the general phenomenon in the Arab world.
You have mentioned Jordan.
The next point is
Jordan.
Revolution.
The kingdom of Jordan.
Jordan. No, Jordan I said. It's the third category. I said Jordan, Morocco, and Saudi Arabia.
Revolution.
Yeah, it's a kind of a reform. Yeah, right. Okay. Now, a very short remark regarding the differences between monarchies and republics. I think that, Walid, you refer to that distinction. I think that is very important, and we historians and scientists who deal with the subject should pay our attention. We still have no good answer, I think, for the differences, but it is very clear there are major differences between republics and monarchies. The monarchies survive for the time being. The republics, many of them, most of them, don't. When we talk about what is common about Egypt, Syria, Yemen, Libya, I forgot Syria, I think, yes, all of them are republics. All of them are republics. All of them are what you said, authoritarian regime, if not dictatorships. Okay? While the monarchies of Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Morocco and the Gulf Sheikdoms as well, they succeeded so far. Now, I can give you partial explanation. One is that usually in the past they responded more favorably to the demands by the opposition. That was the situation in the past, and that is the situation now. We see that. And secondly, the monarchs, some of them, all of them, depends on your opinion, they have some legitimacy, in contrast to those presidents who, many of them, did not enjoy any legitimacy. If you take the Moroccan king or the Jordanian king, well, you know their lineage go back to the Prophet Muhammad. So therefore, they have some religious legitimacy, and I think this is very important, and that helps them to survive. Whether they will be able to survive in the long run, I'm not sure. But that's for the time being explain the survival. One word about the existence of an Arab identity. I think this is very crucial, mainly to Israeli audience, because Israelis usually they like to talk about the disappearance of the Arab world, the fact that there is no common Arab world, and that we are talking about different Arab countries, and that is by and large, this is correct. But I think that what we see now is the fact that there is indeed such a thing as an Arab identity. Because otherwise, you can't explain the wave and how it affected each of the Arab countries. It started in Tunisia, and very quickly it moved elsewhere. And the reason is because we are talking about one world, I mean the Arab world, which is very much influenced by the social media, by Al Jazeera, by Al Arabiya. They read Al Hayat and Al Sharq Al Awsat and other things as well. So the language is very important here, and therefore I think that the question of Arab identity is very important, and it affected the events in this connection as well. Where we are going, where we are heading. Walid gave us some ideas. Let me contribute my thinking. No doubt we are going to see a more democratic Arab world. But are we going to see a democratic regime? I'm not sure. Perhaps, that is a possibility. And it will take some time. But no doubt we will see a more democratic discourse. We are already witnessing a more democratic discourse. And therefore, in the transition from authoritarian to democracy, this is a very important phase. And it is very much a possibility that we will see democratic regimes. I think that Tunisia is the first example, but no doubt Egypt is the ultimate model. Because in the past, Egypt is the most important Arab country, And in fact, when we see, historically speaking, the most important historical processes, they usually had started in Egypt. Whether it is modernization, whether it is westernization, socialism, the Arab coup d'etats that you mentioned with Gamal Abdel Nasser and his three officers, Arab nationalism, pan-Arabism, everything had started in Egypt. And therefore, whatever will happen in Egypt is very crucial, is very important, and I think that every one of us in the region looks up at Egypt to see what will happen in the next elections, to the parliament and to the presidency, because it will determine a lot in what will happen. Now, how much time do I have?
Another question.
Okay, that's enough. What will happen to the balance between the secular and the Islamic forces? This is maybe the most important and interesting question. Frankly, I think we don't know. We can speculate. And again here, Tunisia, might give us a clue. And it seems that the Islamic forces are the biggest and the strongest. To what extent? We don't know. Now, according to the polls, they are not always reliable, but in fact, with regard to Tunisia, they were quite right. They said something like 1/3. When we talk about Egypt, usually they say 1/3. This is the people that are expected to vote for the Muslim Brotherhood and what you call the Salafi groups. Well, maybe it will be more than that. I mean, that is a possibility, because if you take polls in Egypt, obviously you cannot do them in the poor suburbs of Cairo, where the Islamic forces predictably are very strong. So we don't really know what is the situation on the ground. But I think that in any case, what we are going to witness is the emergence of a kind, I would say, of a new model in Arab politics. This model might resemble the Turkish example. Might. I'm not sure. But that is a possibility. Because it means that, because in Turkey we have the Islamic Party which rules and it has a majority. But this would not necessarily be the situation here. And here there might be a case that there will be coalitions between the Islamic forces and some secular forces. And everyone would have to modify its ideology and its platform in order to meet the political necessity. So it means that not only there will be a process of Islamization of the secular forces, but a process of secularization of the Islamic forces. And in such case, there will be a very, common word that we use with regard to cars and other things like hybridity, hybridization. It's a combination, hybridity. It's a hybridity of secularism and Islamism. I think that might be the case, and I would predict that that would be the outcome. But again, as I'm saying, we don't really know, we can just speculate. Last word, let me conclude with, well, as an Israeli, I have to say something about Israel, right? And what Israel has to do in order to meet the challenge. There are two schools of thought in Israel, in general. One, sit and do nothing. This is the Netanyahu version. Okay? Why? No, it has a certain logic, I must admit. You cannot deny the logic. I mean, everything is changing around us. Let's sit and do nothing. Let's wait. The second school of thought saying, this is a time of change, of profound change. Let's exploit, let's seize the opportunity and do something. We don't know exactly what is the something, but it means that we have here an opportunity. I belong to the second school of thought. And what I'm saying is, and by the way, this is based also on my academic work. My academic work now concentrates on missed opportunities in the Arab-Israeli conflict. Okay, on missed opportunities in the Arab-Israeli conflict. What I'm trying to do is to see to what extent certain opportunities in the past has been missed. Now I know that this is very difficult to analyze and to say something definite, because we don't know, because this is something that has not happened. But still, you might say something which, if you have a good definition of what is a missed opportunity. Now, according to my analysis, I found out that opportunities arise when there is a profound change in the system. I mean, historically speaking, 48, 67, 73, Intifada, the uprising, okay? Or, I mean, revolutions and wars, or changes in society, changes of regimes, turning points in the system. Those were the moments of opportunity. The Madrid Conference. When was it? 1991. After the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Iraqi war, and more or less the frustration out of the end of the Intifada. There was good reason. So what I'm saying is that if you see that there is a change in the system, and what is going now is a change, is a profound change, then it means that there is an opportunity. And this opportunity has to be seized. And therefore, I believe that the Israeli government should launch a major, not something which is insignificant or minor, a significant peace process or a peace initiative in order, to change or to seize the moment. Now, I think that in the Arab world, what we see is that there are many who are against Israel. But we have to differentiate, I think, between two audiences. The one which is completely is opposed the very idea of the Israeli Jewish state, and the second which opposes Israeli policy. This is something different. He accepts in principle the idea of Israel, but negates or opposes its policy. We should talk to those, because I'm interested in those. I'm not interested, I would not be able to persuade or convince someone who is very much against the very idea of Israel. But I want to be able to be in contact or to respond to those who are willing to accept Israel and want to finish or to find a solution to the Palestinian issue, mainly, also with Syria, but generally speaking. So I think that this is a possibility, okay? And therefore, I think this is the right time to launch something. Finally, and that is my last point, going back to the question of revolution. If you want to know if indeed it was a revolution, I gave you already one definition, but here I give you another clue, okay? Going back to my research on national celebrations in the Arab world. If the Egyptians are going to celebrate in a meaningful way the 25th of January to 2012 as a major national holiday, then you know it is a revolution. Okay? Thank you very much.